everybody. I hope you can hear me. This is the Late Show, and I'm your host, Jan Brando, and we are going to talk about watches. We're going to talk about specifically tomorrow's Christie's New York Important Watches auction. I left the discussion of Tom Brady, the Tom Brady collection, the GOAT collection for tomorrow. Because I will have a very special guest, a super fan joining me. You all know him. It's Bezos. I will drop a link to his YouTube channel as well, so you show him some love, so he can see some growth in numbers, which is always encouraging. That being said, I always put the link there, not just a matter of course, but really to actually encourage you to join me. So if you're in the mood for some watch talk, if you want to talk about some of these watches that are coming up under the hammer, coming up on public auction at Christie's New York tomorrow, and you can see them right here in the link, please feel free to jump on the panel as well. That would always be appreciated. If you have just chanced upon this live stream, and if you like watches, feel free to sign up, because I'm here with content on a regular basis, almost every day, barring some sort of personal or professional issue, which I'm slowly getting a handle on. So we are getting there. But you guys know, if you're following me on Instagram, that's been going quite well. And it has actually recently surpassed 3,000 followers, which is a lot for me, because I barely had more than 2,000 just very recently. And it's, on the one hand, it's surprising, flattering, and encouraging. On the other hand, it also feels very silly and very arbitrary, because I've always been doing the same kind of work. I've always been posting similar kinds of content, but you just have to continue throwing things against the wall and hope something sticks, or hope something, in fact, actually goes over the fence and actually scores for you. And I think I found what to me is a winning formula, what for me is a winning formula. And you can, even if you really want to home in and analyze, you can even see what is the kind of content that performs so much better than everything else, and what is, what is still kind of underperforming even under this new regime, this newfangled interest, which is genuine, right? It's built, not bought. It's earned, not given. It's the kind of thing that a lot of people would die to have. On a lighter note, of course, 3,000 followers, and I know this from some very nice ladies that I've dated in the past, and whom I was following at some point on Instagram as well. 3,000 followers is, if you're a very pretty girl who doesn't try, that's the number of followers you get on Instagram. If you're naturally beautiful, and if you have just one or two posts, or 3 or 5 that you once every so often purge, and you use Instagram to just post stories, to feel out the vibes, or whatever it is that people talk about. I don't even know this language, people, but I'm trying anyway. So that number I've reached with years of hard work, and creating actual content, which is something that I'm immensely proud of. And I'm gonna actually, yeah, let's take a look at some of the interesting stuff from recently. Just before getting on this live stream, I posted Dizzy Gillespie's famous GMT Master. Of course, these are photos of his watch. This is a photo of a similar watch that came on public auction last year. But this was the watch that he wore so passionately and in such a committed fashion, in fact, up until his passing. And it's an early Rolex GMT Master, all the way back from when they were called Pan Am, what we call today a Pepsi GMT. It's a very early example of that, with a bakelite bezel, which was subject to a recall, so to speak, right, because of the amount of radioactive material that it contained due to the loom inside it. And incidentally, he wore it on a Jubilee bracelet in the early years, and you see him later on with a GMT Master on an Oyster bracelet. And I kind of think, well, I don't kind of think, I'm pretty sure it's the same watch. And I like to think it's because, as we know, as is the case with these older Rolex bracelets, it gave out at some point. It had stretched out to such an extent that it needed to be changed out. So he went with an Oyster bracelet this time around. And my friend and collector, the resident collector at Kohl & Pad, so to speak, and the founder of the Collector's Room, Gary Getz, said that what a two-piece collection for Dizzy Gillespie's two-piece set, 1-2 combo. And that's the Rolex GMT Master 6542 and the Patek Philippe chronograph reference 1463, right? The one that's known as the Tasti Tondi, which I had just covered a little while ago. There we go. It's a pretty good two-watch collection, right? I might be up for downsizing at some point, so maybe I should copy him. Although I'm not sure. I guess my equivalent would be my Rolex Submariner, which was once my dad's, of course, 5513, and probably my Royal Oak, the 14800. I think that would be a decent two-piece collection. Whole Milk says salt peanuts flavored patina. That sounds good. That sounds good with some cheap-ass blended scotch. That's the breakfast of champions. Salted peanuts, blended scotch. That's what a way to start the day. But yeah, unfortunately, that's not his watch, because these two watches, both the Rolex and the Patek, have not yet appeared on public auction, have not been sold or bought in a public way. I don't know if the family still has them in their possession, but most certainly I would have loved to see how his actual watch looked like, especially in the case of the GMT Master. Right? I like to think that the Tasti Tondi is still in impeccable condition, and ironically, or maybe counterintuitively, I would like to see the GMT Master somewhere close to this perhaps. There was a little bit of a lull in terms of the live stream, so I posted a lot of stuff. I don't want to go too far back because I do actually want to talk about the Christie's. No, it's not a dumb joke. You're educating me, whole milk. I love jazz, but I need much more hand holding and much more instruction. You know, I have a few favorite tunes that I sometimes also actually end up using as background music for some of these photos that I share on Instagram. Some of these, lifestyle, horological lifestyle content that I create on Instagram, but I don't always know as much as I like to about jazz. You know, I love Miles Davis. I love Thelonious Monk. I love, as much as I know, Dizzy, but you know, it's limited. I love me some Coltrane, but you know, if you told me, count me your top 5 favorite tunes from each of these musicians, I would probably blank out very quickly. Marine Layer, congrats, thank you. So yeah, I don't want to spend way too much time. I think we all know this as well, but I wanted to juxtapose everything and add some extra information. This is Michael Jordan on courtside watching basketball and wearing an Alain Gonzune datograph in platinum. He is wearing the first version, the reference 403035, right? The one without the power reserve indicator, the one that comes in a smaller case, 39 millimeters in diameter, less than 13 millimeters thick. I think it's more around 12.8. I really love actually the balance of this dial, even though it seems, again, rather asymmetric and very much like a Lange dial. And of course, what I love most is actually the fact that it has a bracelet. And some of you guys might know this. This bracelet, these bracelets used to be made for Alain Gonzune by a house called Wellendorf. And Wellendorf is like a storied jeweler that is based in the other side of Germany, in a city called Pforzheim, which is kind of the Western equivalent to Glashütte, and the Western equivalent, or jewelry equivalent as well, to the watchmaking pedigree of Glashütte. And Wellendorf has in the past made many bracelets for other brands as well, including Patek. And most recently, they made that chain style bracelet for the new Patek Philippe Ellipse d'Or, the one that they just reintroduced in pink gold with an integrated bracelet, which is quite mind-blowing and unpredictable. But if you know your history, you know Wellendorf has made bracelets in the past for Patek, IWC, Lange, and others. But sometimes it can be surprising to see that, hey, they had made it for the Swiss as well, even though they are themselves a German company. By the way, this is like, I've always marveled. This is not a put down at all, because I think Michael Jordan, in this day and age, is still quite underrated as a watch collector. He comes up once every so often, with with a beautiful de Béthune or a crazy Uhrwerk on his wrist, and of course, the Daytona, with whom or with which he shares the birth year. He loves wearing it in platinum. We all know these things, but I think overall he is not given enough credit for his good taste in watches, which I find really discordant with what I consider, from my humble perspective, his bad taste in clothing. I mean, here he's wearing this, I don't know, this sports jacket that's probably like 2 to 4 sizes too big for him. And unironically at that, right? It's not like Balenciaga or today's Maison Margiela or something like that. It's been very puzzling to me. Hey Basil, nice to see you. GGXL, nice to see you too. This is a way of saying that not John Lennon wasn't the only Beatle with a Patek. And again, this is not like very arcane knowledge, because we know that Paul McCartney wears an Aquanaut on the regular, but there's this Patek that Ringo sold just a few years back, well, now almost a decade ago, in 2015, in Los Angeles. There's an auction house here called Julien, or Julian's. And they focus on usually selling the estates of very high-profile celebrities, or items, articles, props, memorabilia related to the industry, i.e. Hollywood, filmmaking. And about a decade ago, they actually sold a lot of stuff for Ringo Starr and his wife. And he sold this example of what is called the Patek Padellone, which is a watch that we talked about, and which is today kind of represented in the model line in the Patek catalog by reference 5235, because it has a similar case design, that later model. But what the 3448 was the first automatic Patek perpetual calendar. So its design heritage actually is quite lasting in the Patek design language, and it's still there in perpetual calendars as well. But this was the first. It's one in yellow gold. I love those. It's a big case for the time, 37 millimeters, made in a way even bigger, or made to appear a little bigger, with those angular extended lugs that curve down. And he sold it about Julian's sold it for him for about $180,000, and he actually wears an Aquanaut himself now. So that may have seemed like a downgrade then, but kind of the balance perhaps has shifted in terms of the coolness. But I thought this was a great look, actually, combining chains and an extremely elegant and classic dress watch with a prestige complication, which brings us to my last point before we get to the auction. This is Tyler, the creator, actually fellow Anquileno, I mean, of course, he has a much bigger claim to the city than I ever can. I came here 9 years ago. This guy is actually part of the music scene here. I actually like a lot of his music, um, and I really like his style, which is very personal, very individual, very original. Because it's not like any other rapper I know. I mean, I know he shares a lot with Pharrell, with whom he has collaborated in the past, but his brand, Le Fleur, is kind of quirky neo-prep brand, and he oftentimes looks like some sort of cross between uh, a college kid and a professor of some sort. Um, and he is a huge collector of Cartier as well, and had gotten one of these pebbles when they were reissued a couple of years back to collaborate the 50th anniversary of that design. You guys probably know, if you know me, I'm not a big fan of these kinds of designs. A lot of what is associated with the swinging 60s and London that came out of the Cartier London house, like the Crash, like the Pebble, is not really my favorite, but it is what it is. I always admire people who, pardon me, who have um, the courage to wear and display what is their taste, right? And Tyler, the Creator, is like that. Um, Ghana, in a different ways, is that, right? Because he clearly has connections and possibly even an endorsement from Audemars Piguet, and he could wear any watch, and he does wear many different watches from AP and also at times from Cartier as well. But most recently, and in his live shows, in his videos, he has been wearing the AP Remaster 2, which is, it's a very different piece, right? It's certainly not something that you would uh, be able to slot into any kind of niche, right? It has to be a considerate choice, even if you want to make the argument, perhaps, like, oh, he could have bought it just because he was offered and he was told that it was limited, but then he didn't have to wear it so often, right? This is just a casual occasion, but he has also worn it on all sorts of live shows on his current tour. I'm not sure if he's done with it, but on the One of One tour, and also the Him All Along video. So it's quite admirable, I find. All right, let's shift gears once again. I'm gonna send the link to, but we are in fact diving right in to Christie's Important Watches auction that is taking place tomorrow in New York. And I'm gonna start perhaps with a couple of unpredictable things rather than the usual suspects. But if you want to direct my attention at any time, feel free to send in a super chat with the lot number, and I would be more than happy to change gears and talk about the watch that you want me to bring up. But lot 29 is actually a great example of the kind of diminutive piece of artistry, artwork that we rarely see these days in watches, unless they belong to a very different kind of segment and um, come either, in the shape of exclusive edition Pateks, high-level world timepieces, or perhaps in the world time watches of the famed independent Anderson Genève as well. But there was a time where Sternfrère, the famous dial makers, supplied these micro-painted dials to a number of different watchmakers. And on these come up once every so often in the auction market. A lot of times they carry the branding, the name of Rolex, Patek, Omega, and some of the other usual suspects. But once every so often, you can find them as this one, which is from Esca, which is a much, a lesser known brand. And incidentally, their watches, simply due to the brands and the brand recognizability, sell for much, much less compared to similar examples by Rolex and Patek. And it's not even fair to call them similar examples because, for instance, this style is made by Marguerite Koch, who was in fact the preeminent artist of the time, and made, along with Nelly Richard, and it was really the same handful of artists whose work was commissioned by Sternfrère, who then sold these dials or sourced these dials for Rolex, Patek, Omega, Esca, and Universal, and some others. Klausener enamel is, of course, a technique where, first of all, these artists approached it as a serious project, doing some sort of study at first to decide on the composition, on the colors, at least roughly speaking. And then, of course, the outline of the figure of this micro painting was traced on the dial with hairline threads in gold. And then the figures themselves were filled with enamel powder, which was oven fired multiple times to achieve the desired shade of color. This is a design by Marguerite Koch, again, called Circus, and it's complemented by Arabic numerals at 3/4, beautiful composition of a female acrobat riding a white horse, and a great case design too, with multifaceted splaying lugs in this 34.5 millimeter pink gold case, self-winding movement. This is lot 29, and the estimated value of the watch is between 12,000 to 20,000 in US dollars. Hi, Ryan. How are you doing, man? Again, in the interest of of bringing up watches that are perhaps a little more unusual, less common, rather than the usual suspects. Here's an early Lange one in yellow gold at lot 17. It's a reference 101022. It combines a yellow gold case with heat blued stainless steel hands. It's a silver dial. The framing of the date window, of the double digit date window, was also done with rhodium plating, also is in a silver shade, but the hands, of course, add to the legibility on this dial against a silvered backdrop with heat blue. I mean, heat blue hands are really unique because you see that cornflower blue shade only from certain angles. They can mostly register as very deep blue, um, almost like black when you look at them, full from a full frontal view. Uh, so in either case, whether they read as dark blue or a lighter shade, or even like an electric blue, they're always perfectly legible, and that's what I love most about them. And this is a very nice example. It's not early enough to have a closed case back, but it has lots of patina, both on the case, especially on the case back ring that frames your view of what is also a patinated movement. I mentioned before that three-quarter plate, which Alan Gonzone implemented from the Saxonian watchmaking tradition, from old Saxony pocket watches, actually ages in its own way, takes on patina over time, and it's usually in this very attractive yellowish hue, kind of a champagne-like tint, really, and that I think adds a lot of character to what is already a very distinct and distinguished dress watch. This is lot 17 for an early example of a yellow gold Lange one. And it has a pre-auction estimate set between 15,000 to 25,000 in US dollars. Guys, please hit the like button. We have just crossed our first half hour. I am hoping to go for at least 2 hours, but let's add a humble goal of 5 super chats of $5 or higher for the next hour. And if they actually come, we will have an extra hour of watch talk. If not, I will try to go on as much as I can, but without beating a dead horse. I told you before, I want to keep this channel independent, and God knows there's a lot of other sorts of interest. But my priority is always serving my own audience, working for your interests without being in the pocket of the industry, of the auction houses, or of some shady secondhand watch dealer, these gray market profiteers specifically. So stay with me and continue to support me. If you don't want to use any of the ways provided to you by YouTube. Feel free to use the links that I posted in the video description, but I'm going to drop the PayPal link in the chat as well. Let's look at lot 24, which is a pretty unique and complicated AP. It's a jump hour watch, but also a minute repeater. And it comes in the kind of cushion case that is called a John Schaefer in the AP lingo. And that's because of a particular bespoke commissioned watch that they had made very early on in the 20th century, I think maybe in the 30s already, for a John Schaefer, where that 12-letter name actually was spelled out, informing the hour markers of a cushion cased watch with a similarly shaped dial. So a lot of times these cushion-shaped pieces would be called John Schaefer when it comes to AP. And this is a piece that is also supremely wearable, I want to say. I think they also have a wrist shot of some sort, I thought. Oh no, I was mistaken. But the dimensions are quite cool. And that's basically 33 millimeters wide and 40 millimeter lug to lug. So quite nice for a dress watch. This is a 25-piece limited edition in this particular configuration in pink gold. You have the jump hour in a separate window at the 12 o'clock position, roughly, if this were a traditional watch, and a fan-like scale in the form of a smile, let's say, in the lower part of the watch. And the Audemars Piguet branding is actually on a plaque right under that minute scale. Of course, quite traditionally, the chiming function is engaged with a slider, with a slide on the left flank of the case. Apparently, lot 24 comes with an undated AP certificate of origin. I think by that they must mean that it probably doesn't have the date of the sale, must probably have the information about the place of this watch in the series, since it's part of a 25-piece limited edition. And of course, perhaps as always, the highlight of a chiming watch is its movement. And here you have one with a very classic architecture with a 3-finger bridge and beautifully polished stainless steel hammers as well. There's number 24, as you can see. The hallmarks and all the engravings on the case back are extremely crisp. This is lot 24 for an AP cushion-shaped minute repeating jump hour wristwatch, which, again, you know, when it comes to these sorts of designs, especially when they involve small windows and scales, people always complain about legibility, and rightly so. But if you can't actually see the time properly, if you can't really read the time, you can always chime it and hear it, which is beautiful, which really combines, you know, again, those two romantic, on the one hand, aesthetic oriented, on the other hand, oral oriented aspects of watchmaking, which I think are quite underrated in this day and age. And the pre-auction estimate of this watch is set between 30,000 to 50,000 in US dollars. Yes, Captain Kirk, I don't disagree. But honestly, sometimes I am also irritated by what has become a very uniform and somewhat hipster aspect of presenting watches in this particular fashion, especially. Okay, I'm not going to name any auction houses, but you probably know what I mean with these, like, nubuck leather straps in kind of very neutral, usually earthy colors. That gets boring after a while. I like seeing an imperfection once every so often. I'm trust me, Captain Kirk, I'm as OCD and as obsessive as you and as the rest of my audience. But sometimes I like seeing that kind of imperfection on this in this area, in this realm. The imperfection I don't want to see in the lot essays, in the details, in the photographing of the actual object, in terms of the specific nuances of the condition, whether the strap is ill-fitting. Who cares? I mean, especially if you are shopping internationally, they probably can't ship it with the strap anyways, especially if it's like an original strap that's somewhat exotic. Hey, no, you're not late at all. You're not late at all, 92. We have just started, basically. I mean, you know my sense of time. We're almost 45 minutes into it, but it is what it is. We are looking at Christie's New York Important Watches. Let me send the link again. And we're looking at an early Frank Muller. Frank Muller is, especially before he even set off as with his full name, released a lot of watches even under the moniker Frank Genève. But I think all the way through the 90s, he still also released watches that were a little more conventionally designed, not necessarily always sticking to the tonneau-shaped case. And I'm sure you are familiar with some of the automatic chronographs that started cropping up on the secondary market and in the auction circuit, and that were in fact reissued not too long ago. But they're also nicely complicated examples of such wristwatches. And after all, it behooves Frank Muller, because he always used the moniker, pardon me, master of complications, right? And this is a grand complication, basically, number one in this gold case, 39 millimeters in diameter, with a matching Frank Muller déployant clasp. And it's kind of like an officer style case with screw through lugs. And as you can see, the piece has a leap year indicator at 2 o'clock in a small subdial, a pointer date at 3 o'clock, the day of the week at 9 o'clock, with an overlapping 24-hour / day and night indicator, a moon phase indicator, which shares that 6 o'clock real estate with a power reserve indicator as well. And under the brand signature and at 12 o'clock, there is, in fact, a retrograde indicator for the month. Of course, not to forget that this is a chiming watch, so there is a slider in the design of a shark fin, let's say, on the left flank of the case, which is like a traditional officer styled case. Here's another picture from the profile. Very nice silver dial. And here is a look at the movement, which is actually quite nicely decorated. Maybe not up to the level of what people came to expect from independent watchmakers in the age of macro photography, but not bad. You know, there are some interior angles. There's some decent anglage there, and a floral / wave-like decoration on the bridges as well, which, if you appreciate it, is actually quite beautiful. I always found it somewhat of a throwback. You know, I'm not a huge fan. And of course, the tourbillon, you can see through the case back as well, even if it is not shown through the dial in any way. So it has just about everything but the kitchen sink in a single package. This is lot 23 for a Frank Müller Grande Complication, a minute repeating perpetual calendar tourbillon wristwatch with additional indicators for equation of time, which, if you were perceptive enough, is integrated into that fan-like scale for the months, for the retrograde indication of the months. There's a moon phase indicator, power reserve indicator, as well as a leap year indicator and a 24-hour hand. The estimated value of the watch is at a seemingly conservative $20,000 to $40,000 US, and the watch comes from right around year 2000. Guys, I see there are 20 people, so hit the like button, please. Let's increase the number of the likes at the very least. That always helps me a great deal, if nothing else, and it doesn't cost anything. So please. We are also closing on our first hour. And we are covering tomorrow's Christie's New York, important watches, and again, if you have any watch-related questions, anything at all, or if you want me to discuss any specific lots from this auction, for which I will post the link again, please feel free to send in a super chat. And if it is in the amount of $5 or more, it will also contribute towards our goal. Captain Kirk, yeah, but sometimes, they tend to. Well, there are two reasons why the initial estimates, the pre-auction estimates, may be low. One, insurance, right? If you always go for inflated amounts, your insurance cost as an auctioneer as an auction house will be much higher. Sometimes they give advances long before the sale, after the consignment, to people who are selling watches with them. If the initial estimate is high, you'll have to give your consigners even more money in advance. And well, this is already two reasons. The third reason is that it allows them to entice early bids, to entice more bids, to elicit more interest in watches, to drive up the final price eventually. And four, and this is kind of a latter day development, but because auction houses in the age of social media love advertising their successful results right after the auction concludes, one of the factors they have underlined constantly is that our watches have sold for twice the high estimates on this and that many occasions. Or overall, if you look at the total hammer price of these auctions, it was such and such percent above the highest ceiling of the pre-auction estimate. So it's just another way of kind of inflating what could be already a positive result. So those are the four reasons why auction houses usually start with a conservative estimate: insurance costs, the money to be paid to the consignor in advance, eliciting as many bids as possible, and also finding ways to talk up the eventual auction result. It sounds just so much more impressive when the estimate is low and the final sale so much higher in comparison. At lot 27, we are looking at a later example of a Clausenet enamel dial, of a micro painting, so to speak. By the way, if you want to read, especially about the kind of Clausenet enamel dials that I was talking about, if you want to read on that subject, about the dial at large, but specifically about the kinds of dials that Sternfrère made through the 20th century, you should most certainly seek out the book called Le Cadran, or The Dial, written by Dr. Helmut Krott, and it's called The Face of the Wristwatch in the 20th Century, and it mostly focuses on the kinds of dials that Sternfrère made, but there's so much more about the industry that you can learn from those pages, and the book is available both in French and English, at least. There must be a German version, because I believe the quote-unquote original French was already translated from Dr. Krott's German. So there's that. This is a limited edition of 30 pieces of an Ulysse Nardin. As you guys know, Ulysse Nardin, being quite proud of a certain legacy in making marine chronometers, takes on nautical themes quite often. And this piece is specifically dedicated to the English naval ship called HMS Caesar, a ship that sailed from 1792 to 1921. And it's a great depiction of it. 30 pieces. And you can get a sense here of the vivid colors as well. It's a beautiful dial. Quite a stunning case too, by the way. Obviously, much more substantive than the ESCA that we were looking at. Much more modern, I should say, rather, 40 millimeters here, and with a slightly more contemporary design, I must add. In 18 karat pink gold, the piece actually comes with a lot of its original accessories, if not necessarily the full package. Here's a look through the case back. A self-winding movement with a 22 karat Ulysse Nardin rotor in pink gold as well. That is guilloche decorated. This is lot 27 for the Ulysse Nardin Classico HMS Caesar. One of 30 in pink gold, a much modern dress watch than the vintage ESCA that we were looking at. Beautiful polished gold dots serve as the hour markers as well. And furry style leaf-shaped hands that are filled with luminous material are accompanied by sweep center seconds. And the pre-auction estimate is set in the range between $8,000 to $16,000 US dollars. We were looking at a few, Michael Jordan's Lange datograph with the bracelet, and there are examples of the Lange 1 with bracelets, but they are integrated bracelets, and the cases are without lugs, so it's a different aesthetic, and I'm not sure how much I like it, but I will just show you, and you tell me what you think as well. There's an example in pink gold at lot 61 with a black dial, which is a great aesthetic. But as I mentioned, there are no lugs, but an integrated bracelet instead. Again, the older movement that was built on the JLC gear train that you can distinguish by these islands on the 3/4 plates in German silver, which has taken on a very charming patina. I'm not sure how I feel about these versions of bracelet pieces by Lange, because to me, those angular lugs of the case are some of my favorite parts of Lange's design. So when they're eliminated in this particular way, I think you take away something from the watch. This is lot 61 for a pink gold example of a Langewan on an integrated bracelet. Pardon me, it's a reference 151031 from around year 2000 with an estimated value between 20,000 to 40,000 in US dollars. And there was a white gold one. Right here at lot 41 with a similar kind of estimate between 20 to 40,000 from a similar time period, reference 160,029. A little more ornate, maybe more of a cocktail watch aesthetic that comes out in this particular version, which is executed in 18 karat white gold paired with a mother of pearl dial. Kind of cool in its own way, but again, it's not, I don't know, it doesn't seem like it would be the first Langewan that someone would seek after. This was lot 41 for reference 160,029, an integrated bracelet Langewan piece in white gold with a mother of pearl dial. And the pre-auction estimate is set in the range between 20,000 to 40,000 US dollars. We're looking at tomorrow's Christie's Important Watches auction. So if you have any watch-related questions, or if you want me to talk about a lot that I passed, that I didn't talk about, that I didn't get to yet, feel free to send in a super chat with your question, with the lot number, and I'll be more than happy to attend to it. I'd be more than happy to dive right into that particular lot to talk about it with as much detail as possible. Here we are looking at Vacheron's 70s integrated bracelet watch, the original, which they brought back just a couple of years ago. It'll be 3 years by the time of Watches and Wonders next year. They brought it back in 2022. Of course, 222, 222 is actually in reference to their 222nd anniversary. After all, that's one of the lasting sources of pride for Vacheron Constantin. They are the world's oldest continuously operating watch manufacturer, and on their 222nd anniversary, they actually launched with Jörg Haschek's design the 222, and it came in not only in the yellow gold, which is the instance of its revival, but of course also in stainless steel and two-tone models. I think very rarely, it may have even appeared only once on the secondary market in white gold as well. It was launched in 1977 and was only made for about 8 years until it was revived in 2022 in the Historique collection, remaining quite loyal to the original design and its proportions. I think they now have a mirror polished flange, which adds another point of intrigue into the design, into the dial. And of course, there's an exhibition case back. And unlike the original, which used a version of the Jaeger-LeCoultre JLC 920 movement, this is a this new one is powered by a new movement as well. It comes with its original sales tag, and as you can see, a bezel removal tool and a money clip as an accessory. That's additional quote unquote bezel that you are seeing is actually a money clip made in the form of a 222 bezel, which might be an interesting piece for the collector. So in fact, in the background, let me send it to a friend. You guys know that I have a number of friends, but also clients too, with whom I share these pieces, whom I consult on watch purchases, on the state of their collections. If you're interested in such services, you can always feel free to drop me a message. And I'm on Instagram all the time, so that's probably the best way to reach me if you want to quote unquote cold call me on anything with any requests. So I'm just dropping the link again, but most of you guys know I go by the same moniker there, Young Brando. At Young Brando is my YouTube, at young.brando is my Instagram. This original Vacheron Constantin 222 in yellow gold, quite well preserved, quite late in the series, actually, in the 37 millimeter jumbo version as well, which is more desirable, of course, than the reduced sized examples, with an estimated value that is set in the range between 40,000 to 60,000 in US dollars. We are continuing our adventure, our casual browsing through the Christie's Important Watches auction that's going to take place tomorrow. Lot 63 is one of my absolute favorites, as you guys know. It's the stainless steel version of 5960. Which is Patek's combination of an annual calendar and a self-winding chronograph with a flyback function. As you can see, this particular example is sealed, though I believe, this is a very casual look, it is the single seal, so to speak. So just as it presumably left the manufacturer, and it is the full package, so to speak. Everything is included: the setting pin, the presentation box, the papers, the product literature, of course, the certificate of origin, and again, I think 5960 in all its different flavors, whether we are talking about the original platinum version with a silver starburst dial, or the white gold version that's kind of styled like a pilot's chronograph and has those famous Tasti Tondi style pushers, and I think also a stunning blue dial. They all have their own charm, but I think, overall, so to speak, in the sense that this would be probably the best everyday wearer, especially for those who like bracelet watches. It is probably also the most bang for your buck. On the secondary market these days, it's almost universally under $50,000, whether you're looking for the white gold or the stainless steel. I think both are great deals. You can find it a little cheaper than that too. Again, if you need some help in sourcing one, feel free to write to me. But you can find some great deals on this model, which is kind of like a modern take on what Patek does best, which is making wearable, complicated watches. And this is the white dial version, which is, of course, the more easier to come by. The black one being produced only for 1 year usually comes with a premium. I don't really find it that attractive. I think this is the more handsome model anyways. And that is lot 63 for a sealed version of it. And it has an estimated value of $30,000 to $50,000 US dollars. That is the Patek Philippe annual calendar with a self-winding flyback chronograph, just as it arrived from the factory. Lot 64 is one of my favorite Patek Philippe modern perpetual calendars in perhaps one of its most distinguished iterations, specifically in platinum. This is the officer style case, meaning that it has a hinged case back as well as screw-through lugs. The dimensions of the case are 36 millimeters in diameter, but it's actually quite lovely. Because of that particular style of the lugs, the watch actually wears really nicely on the wrist. I think the thickness a little bit that comes from the hinged case back also adds to that presence. The model reference number is 5059 P in this case. So it's in platinum from around year 2003. It does come with basically the full suite of its accessories, the presentation box, which is also a winder, since this is a perpetual calendar, that comes in handy. There's the outer packaging of that box, all the product literature, the sales tag, setting pin, as well as the certificate of origin. And since the watch obviously is mounted on a leather strap, it comes with the original Patek Philippe déployant clasp in platinum as well. Here's a look at that set. Here's the hinged case back. And here's a look at the movement, which carries the hallmark of Geneva on one of its bridges. The hinged case back, of course, beyond its romantic appeal, perhaps, and beyond the substance it adds to a watch, especially in platinum, is also lovely because you get this double take or doubled vision of a beautiful movement. Because the inside of the case back is mirror polished. And of course, another aspect of this particular watch that I like is the retrograde date indicator, right? Which is by a retrograde hand on a scale that is in the form of a downward facing crescent at the center of the dial. And the platinum version actually is quite nice because it almost looks like a black and white photograph, including the moon phase. It has that B&W photograph aesthetic, which is something quite remarkable. Actually, it's kind of like it's like a black and white photograph, and they did well in using a rather plain but grained calfskin leather strap in black to present it on. So this is the Patek Philippe perpetual calendar with a retrograde date indicator, moon phase indicator, and a leap year indicator, with the full suite of its accessories in platinum, reference 5059, lot 64, with a pre-auction estimate between 20,000 to 40,000 in US dollars. Okay, so since we are not going to be seemingly reaching our goal, which was a humble amount of 5 super chats in an amount of $5 or more, that ends in about 17 minutes. I think I will have to end my live stream in about 45 minutes. No worries. If I think a lot of my audience likes me to do work for free, which is fine, but that will have to come in a limited fashion. After all, guys, I put a lot of work onto this channel. I study these things. I share my knowledge with no conditions here, and I'll offer you my expert opinion on so many different things. Something needs to keep the lights on. I guess I will go out and drive Uber or something if it keeps going like that. I'm certainly not going back to 4 hours a night anymore, it seems, because people don't want it. We're looking at an open-worked perpetual calendar in an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak at lot 65. This is the piece I actually chose as my thumbnail. It's a reference 25636 BA, meaning it is yellow gold case and integrated bracelet and all. And it comes from the 80s, from a series approximately made in 156 pieces in yellow gold. And it has, for that reason, a very warm and, in my estimation, quite a charming, wholesome patina. The sapphire discs that are used for the calendrical indications have outer rings that are in a golden shade. Same thing goes for the minutes ring. So it really, I think, presents a holistic picture. It is a very integral design in that way too, with thin but quite elegant pencil hands, also in the same shade as the case. And of course, in an open worked presentation that allows you to see the perpetual calendar module on the dial side. And of course, Audemars Piguet, in its traditional approach, carries things through. So you have a movement which, in fact, has also open-worked bridges that are beautifully hand engraved as well. So what you get overall is an ultra-thin perpetual calendar that practically fits in the same case, certainly same diameter of case as the original Royal Oak Jumbo, but in an ornate and quite artistic presentation, both on the dial side and on the movement side. As you can see, the oscillating weight 2 is in that older version of an open work presentation that puts into sharp relief the two initials of the founding families in Gothic font, and it is also ennobled by those engraved details as well. Am I broadcasting in HD right now? I don't know. I was trying to avoid that, actually. I'm scared. I'm scared. I think it should be 720. I have the capability to broadcast in HD. But since I already started the live stream at 720, I don't think I can change that retrospectively. But I increased back to 720 now. So let's see if it makes a difference. I don't know. I don't know if it affects anything, honestly. I think the sound quality, ironically, is a little more important than what you see on the screen in terms of my face on a live stream. But hey, I learn something every day. So maybe you'll tell me otherwise. Yeah, it was 480 actually. Now that you warned me, I bumped it up back to 720. But I have to start in HD. I have to start at 1080p to broadcast in HD. I have to start that way. I can't change it in the middle of the broadcast. We were looking at lot 65, which is an AP Royal Oak perpetual calendar with an open work dial in yellow gold. The piece has a pre-auction estimate that is set in the range between 100,000 to 180,000 in US dollars. The reference number is 25636BA, which dates it around mid to late 80s, if I'm not mistaken. Again, in the interest of going for something that we don't cover every day, let's look at lot 72, which is Abercrombie and Fitch Seafarer. These were chronographs made by Hoya for the American outfit. This is apparently from the second series, reference 2443. And it's basically a chronograph that has a tide indicator. Nicely patinated, kind of a dark beige dial, and with the distinctive teal and orange colors that accent the chronograph registers both in its 30-minute totalizer at 3 o'clock and the tide indicator at 9 o'clock. The piece is presented in a stainless steel case, 38 millimeters in diameter. And this particular example apparently is consigned by the family of the original owner. This is lot 72, pardon me, for an Abercrombie & Fitch Seafarer, reference 2443, made by Hoya. And it has an estimated value between $15,000 to $25,000 in US dollars. This is not so much a watch that we don't talk about much, but still quite rare, so it needs to be brought to attention. Of course, these kinds of watches find the best value when the dial is in tip-top shape, in great condition, but this is a very attractive, kind of a gold dust situation going on. And it's a watch that brings together two of the iconic models, in a way, from Rolex. Their field watch, the Explorer, which has its own heritage, which has its own strong history that has been associated also after the fact with the climb onto Mount Everest as well. And the Rolex Submariner, of course. This is a Submariner with an Explorer dial. Same reference as mine, but of course mine doesn't have the Explorer dial, reference 5513. And it's an underline dial, meaning it has this line right under the Submariner signature at 6 o'clock, which is itself under the depth rating, a meters first depth rating at that. It's the underlying dial is, of course, a variation of the gilt dial. This is an early 60s version of the Explorer, and apparently it was formerly owned by professional golf champion Adam Scott. And it is mounted here on a nice riveted oyster bracelet as well. And this particular lot actually arrives with an international service guarantee / papers and its accompanying invoice from 2017. And I think it's also quite significant that this watch has those pointed crown guards as well, which perhaps adds to its charm for certain collectors. This is a Rolex Submariner, reference 5513, with an Explorer dial, black gilt underline, from around 1963. Lot 76 has an estimated value set between 50,000 to 100,000 in US dollars. Okay, we have about half an hour more. I think it's become pretty clear that the goal is not going to be reached with less than 4 minutes to go. But that's okay. If you have any watch-related questions, any other items that you would like me to highlight before this live stream ends in about half an hour, a little less than half an hour, feel free to send in a super chat, and I will do my best to attend to your question and cover it in as much detail as possible. Now, we have here something that is a usual suspect on the auction circuits, but in a form perhaps that's not as common. This is the mid-size Nautilus, the reference 3800, with a dial co-signed by Tiffany and Company of New York. From the late 80s, this is again the reduced version with 37.5 millimeters of diameter in stainless steel, of course, on the matching integrated bracelets. And of course, the condition looks pretty good too, and unpolished at that, but the dial is really striking, of course, in its classic ridged black and blue, or rather black to blue gradients configuration. Wow. Thank you, C3D. Now, I don't know if we have 1 minute and 30 seconds for a fifth. Oh, that came too. Okay. Well, we are going amazing. Thank you so much, C3D. Now, I don't even know what to say. So we are actually going at least until 9 now, which is fantastic, because you guys know how much I actually love doing this. So it pains me to close at 2 hours, but it perhaps pains me more to not see anything back from my efforts too, if you know what I mean. I know a lot of you appreciate me in other ways. I know you say that a lot. I read it in your comments. I read it in the DMs you send on Instagram. But at the end of the day, for this channel to sustain itself and thrive as an independent platform that has a community, this is very important. And I see 3D now, I really, really appreciate you. It really makes all the difference. All right, coming back to the auction and C3D now, please feel free to at least share with me one lot that you would like me to discuss specifically for you, so I give you something in return for your contributions. And thank you, 92, ABNS 92, you as well. And that's great, fantastic. That's an 449 rupees. Thank you so much. We were talking about this wonderful example of a mid-size Patek Philippe Nautilus. These were actually really popular throughout the 90s, 37.5 millimeters in diameter. Look, I'm very biased. I'm very much a Royal Oak guy. Not a huge fan of the Nautilus design. Especially don't like its width with these old big ears off the porthole shape. So I actually prefer the 3800s, which is kind of proportionally shrunken, but seems to eliminate some of what is to me an excessive width, and is in a way an initial step towards the Aquanaut design too, which is what I prefer actually to the Nautilus. And you get here an example of the 3800s with the Tiffany signature on the dial. This piece has a different automatic movement rather than the legacy tractor caliber from JLC, caliber 920. So it has actually sweep center seconds. And this is not, 3800 does not universally have a quick set dates, but from 87 onwards, I think it also has that too. So if you have found it always a pain with the JLC 920 movement to go back and forth around midnight to advance the date, this is a watch that cures that particular quote-unquote deficiency of the jumbo legacy caliber. Nice Tiffany presentation box with a royal purple interior. There's a look on the case back, which is of course a closed case back. And this is lot 90 of a Patek Philippe Nautilus that was retailed by Tiffany and Company, reference 3800. It is also signed as such. It is the smaller model, 37.5 millimeters in diameter, and lot 90 has a pre-auction estimate that is set between 40,000 to 80,000 in US dollars. Oh, thank you. So C3D now is not only so generous, he also trusts my judgment, which is perhaps just as flattering. Lot 92 is a perhaps seemingly less desirable configuration of the Aquanaut, but why not have the option, right? Because we are used to the Aquanaut as it was introduced in 1997 on a tropic style rubber band, which then and now also offers a different form of integral design, right? Between the pattern on the dial and the pattern on the rubber strap. That being said, 5167 and also certain Aquanaut references, pardon me, before that, had matching bracelets as well. I'm not a huge fan of the bracelet as a design and how it wears on this particular model, but it is removable it's not an integrated bracelet, so you can always put it on a rubber strap. And this one, for example, comes with one and its matching deployant clasp too, so you get the best of both worlds in an important way. This is lot 92. It's a 5167 line 1A, meaning that it is in stainless steel on the matching bracelet. The modern Aquanaut Jumbo. It comes from year 2012, but looks quite well preserved. And it is offered with the full suite of its accessories. And the pre-auction estimate is set between 40,000 to 60,000 in US dollars. This is once again tomorrow's Christie's important watches auction. So feel free to send in lot numbers of watches that you would like me to discuss. And again, thank you C3D Now and thank you C3D Now and ABNS 92 for trusting my judgment. But again, when you send a super chat, since we don't have any goals now, in whatever amount, and I'm not going to set any more official goals for tonight, but if you keep them coming, I will continue to do my broadcast for maybe even another hour, right? We are going until 9 now, at least. And why not go until 10? And if we go until 10, there's no reason why we wouldn't go until midnight even, but that might necessitate another goal. But we will cross that bridge when we come to it. We started seeing a lot of Urban Jorgensen watches on the auction circuit these days. And I find it interesting because the brand is actually, as far as I know, in the process of a revival as we speak. It was bought by a group of investors with the leadership of Kari Voutilainen, who was himself integral as a young watchmaker to the modern iteration of the brand. And you can see, even as his guilloche decorations, even as his engine turning work is present on the dials of a lot of these watches, it's also clear that the aesthetics of their design influenced him for his own independent brand, eponymous brand, Kari Voutilainen. And here's an example of a simple time-only Urban Jorgensen watch. It's really a beautiful piece in 18 karat white gold, 40 millimeters in diameter. So it's quite modern, actually, in terms of its dimensions. But the design of the case is also rather traditional, with a stepped bezel and teardrop lugs. Beautiful applied multifaceted markers for the hours. And again, rhodium plated hands for the hour and minutes with that observatory style. Loop slash beak for the hour hand on the top, and of course different patterns of guilloche decoration for the center of the dial, as well as the oversized subdial for the seconds at 6 o'clock. Here's a look at the movements, which again has a nice but not overly exquisite sort of decoration. And it's a hand-wound movement. For this example of an Urban Jorgensen white gold dress watch with a classic design but modern proportions in 40 millimeters of diameter, I'm sure it wears quite nicely too, especially with the hand-wound movements, which makes it quite sleek. It's the reference 1140L. The movement is quite nice, actually. It has a stop seconds mechanism, caliber P4, which allows, of course, to set the time more precisely, and it's a twin barrel movement. So it has 72 hours of power reserve at full crank. And this was a movement designed by Jean-François Mojon of Chronode for Urban Jorgensen at the time. And of course, ABNS is right to highlight here Derek Pratt's influence, and Derek Pratt was the master watchmaker for a good stretch of the time at Urban Jorgensen. Pratt's influence is high on Kari, as he was very much involved during his young years, during his youth, with the UJ brands, Urban Jorgensen brands, in various capacities. Maybe the very reason he took the revival project of the brand. That makes a lot of sense. The reason I opened up UJ again is because, sometimes I get it confused in that abbreviation when I'm reading it quickly with UN, sometimes with it, which is of course Ulysse Nardin. But anyway, that's my own quirk. There's absolutely no reason for that kind of confusion, of course. This is an Urban Jorgensen 1140L in 18 karat white gold and with a stunning blue guilloche dial at lot 12 with an estimated value between 20 to 40,000 US dollars. And it does come with its box and papers in tomorrow's Important Watches auction by Christie's. Lot 9 is the white gold version of Alain Gonzuni's sporty watch, Odysseus, or Odysseus, as it's often called. This watch was introduced first in stainless steel on an integrated bracelet. And for a long time, it was quite possibly the most popular Lange watch, at least to a more mainstream buyer, not necessarily a long-standing collector of the brand, perhaps. But it was, in so many ways, made for that collector, in fact, who wanted to have a Lange watch for a more casual setting. And honestly, it was, I think, great for the brand that it brought this sort of attention onto it. It was great for the brand equity, but I think it also was one of those moments for Lange where they seem to have lost their way a little bit. um, the excessive uh, cost of service that they ask from some of their most long-standing customers, as well as the bundling practices that they go through for some of their more demanded models have turned off a lot of collectors in recent time. This is something that I know personally from many. Um, just to put it out there, it's important, I think, especially in these kinds of ebbs and flows of the watch market. It's crucial to keep your long-standing customers, keep the passionate watch collectors on your side, because those new customers, which of course you always need to gain, you need some measure of expansion, some kind of opening onto new audiences, but it's always important to make sure that doesn't happen at the expense of the people who keep coming back to you and who will still be there if you have not thoroughly alienated them when the trends and hype chasing customers are gone. And again, now that the watch market is settling into a much more normal situation after the post-pandemic craze, it's important that some of these established brands uh, heed the requests of long-standing collectors. The white gold version of the watch, coming back to the A. und Söhne Odysseus, is in a way much more plain Jane, right? It has a dial that is gray, that mostly matches with the rubber band when the watch is worn on the rubber band. There's also a version that comes on the leather strap, and I think they're exchangeable, so you can get both if you would like. And I think that leather strap, ironically, gives it, I feel, a more sporty look than this particular configuration, because I think this makes it very dark. And maybe that's also the part of the sports watch aesthetic, right? You need a dark dial with some sort of luminous material on the hour markers and hands so that it's legible. Now, what is really distinctive and what makes this watch undeniably a Lange watch rather than just being a generic example of that hyped up genre of integrated bracelet watches is, of course, the fact that this has that double day-date configuration, which has a day indicator at 9 o'clock and a double-digit date at 3 o'clock, which resembles also, of course, the 5-minute clock that Walter Lange's ancestors had made for the Dresden Opera House, and that is up to this day in a revival form, of course, adorns the stage in the Semperoper, in the Dresden Opera House. Of course, the Zeitwerk comes to mind because it precisely used those double windows for the original purpose of the 5-minute clock. But here, that aesthetic is deployed to indicate day and date, which actually I think befits the kind of standing of this watch too, right? The Rolex day date is a kind of, it is the pinnacle of achievement in a way. That's still how they market it as. And a sporty watch with a day date complication, I think, befits the captains of industry that A. Lange und Söhne seem to be chasing. So this white gold example at lot 9 takes on a different cast when you look at it from that perspective. And this particular piece does come with its box and papers, which includes a setting pin for the quick adjustment or correction rather of the day and the dates. Here's a look at the movements, which is self-winding, of course, but it is made of the same materials and similar aesthetic and visual qualities as any other Alangonzune movement, with conspicuous use of German silver and the various modes of finishes, including the glashütte ebbing on the bridge, the perlage or circular graining on the main plate of the movement, the heat blued screws, the rubies that are set into gold chaton countersinks, and the balance bridge that is freehand engraved, but this time with a wavy motif fitting the nautical theme of the watch. And you have an oscillating weight, or rather a rotor, a full rotor with a supplemental platinum weight too. I think it's largely made in tungsten, open worked, and with an additional platinum weight. The estimated value of the piece is in the range between 30,000 to 50,000 in US dollars. For the Odysseus in white gold on a rubber strap. At lot 20, we have the Ferrari watch that Richard Mille produced in collaboration with Ferrari. This watch once held the world record for being the thinnest. It appears sometimes on the wrist of Scuderia Ferrari drivers, such as Charles Leclerc, or we were talking about Pharrell earlier, Man's creative director for Louis Vuitton, who has collaborated with Richard Mille quite often, seems to wear this watch as his daily driver, which is very interesting. It's ultra thin in titanium with a function selector and a visible titanium balance. It's worn on a black rubber Richard Mille strap with a Velcro fastener, and it comes with a titanium winding key, which is what was part of the controversy, so to speak, when this watch came out to claim the record, because of course the Bulgari Octofinissimo that held the record before that did not need an external instrument to be wound. And by the way, the Konstantin Chaikin watch that holds the record now also requires an additional winding key. So the Finissimo Ultra, I think, is still quite special, even though it doesn't hold the record anymore, that it had reclaimed. But now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's held by Konstantin Chaikin's Think King prototype, which is 1.65 millimeters thick overall. I know Richard Mille watches usually don't have a lot of fans in my audience, and I can't count myself as a fan either. But independent of the price tag, I kind of like the aesthetic of this piece. You know, it looks like a nice bracelet, honestly. Kind of. You know, I imagine an Italian Western, like a spaghetti Western, in a futuristic space-like environment. You know, kind of Mandalorian, but with less Star Wars. And I can see something like this as like a native bracelet on someone's wrist. Hard to think of it and hard to take it seriously as a watch, but it is, after all, mostly a conceptual design. Only a limited edition of 150 pieces, of which a lot of the edition already graces the wrists of ultra celebrities and Scuderia Ferrari drivers. So why should I worry all that much? This is lot 20, and the estimated value of the piece is set in the range between 1 million to 2 million in US dollars. Guys, we are just beyond the 2-hour mark. I will go for at least another hour. You know, I will just put it there. You know, no pressure, but I will put it there for another 10 super chats of $5 or more, and I will go until midnight. Watch talk until midnight. And you guys know I'm crazy, so I will actually sustain it. But if we are done with the auction and you want to jump on and discuss some other things, feel free to jump on the panel as well. But let's see, right? If I get in this next hour 10 super chats of $5 or more, I'll go until midnight, not only until 9. So let's try it. And feel free also to just send any questions that you might have in the meantime. So we're looking at a very interesting execution of Uhrwerk's approach to wandering hours. This is something they call the Black Series. Uhrwerk is a brand that was introduced in 1997. And the UR 103 or UR 102 or UR 102 was introduced in 1998. Semicircle wandering hours display in a 38 millimeter symmetrical case with 4 claw-like lugs on each side, which was essentially inspired by the original Soviet Sputnik 1 satellite from the 1950s. So there is some real substantive basis of this futuristic space age watch design always that defines Uhrwerk's aesthetic. Uh, this is very unique, and in fact, it is a pièce unique, I think, um, because it's not only part of the Black Series, which is a 10-piece exclusive run to begin with, but it also has these diamond indices for the minutes that you can see, like an abbreviated baguette cut, 0 at 15, 30, 45, 60, where of course the hour travels in this semicircle. The case is actually a 38 millimeter black PVD coated titanium case. And this piece comes with its original papers as well as a travel case. It's number 6 out of 10, but unique due to its diamond minute markers that you can see a little more closely here in this picture. JD says, I think I saw Jackie Chan wearing that RM. I think you're not wrong, JD. I think I remember recently seeing some picture of Jackie Chan with that um, with that ultra thin Richard Mille on his wrist. In the meantime, we were looking at lot 18, which is the Uhrwerk UR 102, part of the Black Series, which is a 10-piece limited run. It is distinguished, however, by its diamond minute markers from other examples in that series. A very definitive piece in terms of the Uhrwerk aesthetic, their design language, with its round case, the 4-lug design, and it has an estimated value that ranges from 30,000 to 50,000 US dollars. ABNS 92 says the Uhrwerk 102 was my personal choice. It is what I wanted to win as well, but didn't. Unfortunately, it didn't. Now I want to go for something that's a little less common, even though there are a lot of beautiful and very desirable pieces here. So let's go for two interesting ones. Lot 46 is a King Midas, reference 9630 in white gold. I really like the Midas from a design standpoint, and really like it also that it weighs a ton, even though it looks like a very, at first blush at least, a very diminutive, relatively small watch. Of course, it's one of those rare Rolexes that actually have a unique number carved onto them in the series. The white gold examples are quite rare. And again, this is one of those pieces that is said to have been designed by Gerard Janta, but neither Rolex nor Janta's family necessarily confirmed this. The King Midas was introduced in 1962 and was roughly produced for about a decade in its first series before it was absorbed into the Cellini lineup. Of course, it has that unique presentation box, which is modeled after an antique Greek urn. This example, this lot, does not have that. And even though it is assumed to have been made in about 1,000 examples, only about 144 of them is made in white gold, apparently. So this is one such example in white gold. And here in tomorrow's Christie's Important Watches auction in New York City, it is a lot 46, the King Midas reference 9630 in white gold, with an estimated value that's set in the range between 15,000 to 25,000 in US dollars. Lot 48 is another unique example of a design watch with its lineage more clearly and incontestably traced to Gilbert Albert, who made a lot of these sorts of unusual designs for Patek Philippe, and also made watches, by the way, under his own name and brand as well. This is the reference 3422, the rhomboid 2. Not only an unusual geometric shape, but also multifaceted, or rather multi-layered design that has taken on a very nice and warm patina. And the dial certainly has seen better days, but it's by no means ruined. So the condition overall seems certainly interesting. The watch comes with a presentation box. And beyond the oxidization, the case, which is, of course, the most important element of this design watch, is in great shape. This is by definition a very limited production watch. Less than 20 examples made in yellow gold, apparently. And again, it comes with a matching 18-karat gold buckle, the presentation box, as well as an extract from the archives that confirms the manufacture of the watch in 1959 and its subsequent sale on March 9th, 1960. This Patek Philippe design piece by Gilbert Albert, rhomboid number 2, reference 3422. Lot 48 has an estimated value between 40,000 to 80,000 US dollars. And it's one of less than 20 pieces made in yellow gold. So let's shift gears once every so often. Once more, I wanted to say, after we looked at some design pieces, let's switch gears to the stunning Patek Philippe split seconds chronograph. A very desirable prestige complication, but a conventional presentation. This is the reference 5370P, meaning that it is executed with a 41 millimeter platinum case in diameter, with a black enamel dial inscribed Emaille at 6 o'clock, right under the Breguet numeral applied there, which, of course, I should add, that black enamel dial has beautiful applied rhodium-plated Breguet numerals that are combined here with feuille hands that are inlaid with luminous material. The centrally deployed chronograph seconds hand is in a beautiful white, and on the periphery of the dial, a tachymeter is inscribed in white as well, running seconds roughly at 9 o'clock, and a 30-minute totalizer at 3. Of course, the split second pusher is integrated onto the crown. So there's start stop, which makes both seconds hands, which sets off both seconds hands. And when you click the split second pusher, one of them stops. So you can record that interval and continue timing another interval as well. This piece comes with the full suite of its accessories, and here you see that includes an additional platinum case back. And here's a look at that movement, which is really beautiful in its complexity. Of course, there are many reasons to like and desire this watch. The split second chronograph belongs to the Grand Complication series. It is a beautiful platinum piece with Breguet numerals on the dial, which is in and of itself quite desirable for Patek. That dial is an enamel dial, which ups the ante. The fact that it's black, knowing that it's harder to achieve that level of perfection in a darker dial color. Again, another reason that makes this watch more desirable. And of course, applying those Breguet numerals after the fact, gives again another risk to the perfect finish of that dial, since at the end of the day, it is very fragile and brittle. The movement, of course, is perhaps the most desirable piece of any Patek Philippe chronograph. This is lot 55 for the 5370P, the Patek Philippe split-second chronograph in platinum, 41 millimeters in diameter, and a black enamel dial that has applied Breguet numerals. The estimated value of the piece is set in the range between 125,000 to 180,000 in US dollars. The piece arrives with the full set of its accessories at lot 55. I think I wanted to actually add a few more unusual pieces, perhaps, before perhaps closing off. And we have about 40 minutes left, so that gives us maybe 8 to 10 different watches. So I'll try my best to cover as much as possible, unless we reach our goal, of course. But we are still far away from it, since that was 10 super chats, so $5 or more. But let's give it a shot. Lot 57 is a very nice tonneau / TV shaped case for a Patek Philippe perpetual calendar. Incidentally, when it comes to a Patek Philippe perpetual calendar, which is, of course, otherwise a very desirable watch, even on the secondary markets, with decent retention of value, in these smaller and sometimes unusual case sizes, like the officer case 5059 that we were looking at, you can find some great deals. You know, the tonneau-shaped cases, the TV-shaped cases, you can add to that list. And this is one such example. It's a 5940G, which comes in a 30 millimeter TV style case, here rendered in white gold, has that black and white scheme again, which is something very nice and muted, applied Breguet numerals. I kind of like the font chosen for this dial as well, even though maybe the numbers for the dates seem to, pardon me, the numerals seem to be a little more ornate and somewhat discordant to the font of the month and day. But anyway, I really like it. I like that they chose those stylized numerals. They really go well with the applied Breguet numerals. You have at 3 o'clock the month, which wraps itself around the leap year indicator. Pointer date, of course, at 6 o'clock, which circles around the aperture for the moon phase indicator. At 9 o'clock, you have the week, day of the week, which encircles the 24-hour hand. And that also, of course, serves as a day-night indicator. A very lovely black dial, which provides a stunning contrast with the white gold case. The piece comes with its box and papers, as well as the product literature, leather folder to hold the documents, the presentation box, which is also a winder, and its outer packaging. And here's a look onto that classic caliber 24 movements, which is a nice micro rotor and gives you a very nice, sleek design that wears beautifully as well. Hey, Patek Chris. You came in right when I was talking about a Patek, so welcome. Nice to see you guys. If you are just coming in and if you didn't have a chance yet to hit the like button, please do that. That really helps. What really helps is also you sharing this channel, this platform, with other watch collectors and fellow watch enthusiasts, so that we can expand this community that comes together solely for the love of wristwatches, for our passion for wristwatches, and extending our knowledge of them. Hey, and once the live stream ends, please feel free to add a comment that gives some additional traction to these videos, to these live streams as well. So don't hesitate. Thank you so much in either case. I really appreciate that you're here. And if you have just chanced upon this live stream, and if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please feel free to do that now, because I am here with watch content regularly, and it's of course hard to sorry guys, I was just trying to juggle something. And of course you can also follow me on Instagram, on which I post multiple times daily these days, because I finally gained some traction. So if you haven't followed me yet on Instagram, I would be very, very grateful. Patek Chris says, do you believe that there was a two-tone 25-26? Did one come up for sale recently? It's, nothing is impossible. Funny enough, with Patek, and this, but I'm repeating it and I'm explaining it for most members of the audience, the more quote unquote humble materials, as you go back in time, are more rare. So anything made in stainless steel, even the simple Calatrava dress watches, are much more rare. And they have made also two-tone pieces in the past, and those were all special orders, right? The reason that stainless steel pieces were rare is because those were usually ordered individually by established collectors, by some of their preferred clients. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that the 25-26 was made in a special two-tone execution, even though I haven't seen one in person so far. Because 25-26 is also not just one reference, right? It's the first automatic dress watch. First automatic watch by Patek, period. Right? That's the kind of place it has in Patek's history. So it's highly possible that a collector wanted to order a very unique version of it, just for that factor. But I haven't seen one. I haven't seen one. Thank you, OC. I appreciate the super chat, even though if it unfortunately doesn't contribute to our goal, because it was 10 super chats of $5 or more. I appreciate any amount. And OC is also a member of the channel, so he does support me in that way too. I really, really do appreciate it, and hopefully we will see each other soon again. Maybe on a live stream, maybe in real life. In the meantime, we were looking at lot 57 from the Important Watches auction at Christie's, New York. That's going to take place tomorrow. Here's the link once again. This is kind of a TV style case, a perpetual calendar in 37 millimeters, white gold, black dial, applied Breguet numerals with a very lovely balanced and muted dial design, leaf-shaped hands, micro-rotor movements. It comes with the full set of its accessories at lot 57 with an estimated value that's set between 30,000 to 50,000 US dollars. Thank you again for watching. We have about 25 minutes to go. So that means maybe half a dozen more watches. And I think we can be quite discerning. I do want to throw in a pocket watch because there are some exceptional pieces when it comes to pocket watches. And this is a beautiful Patek Philippe piece at lot number 70. It's 57 millimeters in diameter in 18 karat gold with a hunter case. And it's a watch that combines a perpetual calendar, a chronograph with a minute repeater. So you are getting a grand complication Patek and probably in a very interesting price point. For all these different things that you get in a single case, you're also getting a substantial thing. That's one of the charms of a pocket watch. Not only are they relatively speaking a great deal when it comes to similarly configured wristwatches, which are much more widely demanded, which have more appeal to a mainstream audience, they're also quite a thing. Like, it's a lot of material. Like there's something about being in the presence of a large pocket watch, especially, and this is a complicated piece, 57 millimeters in diameter, so it's going to be quite hefty. Of course, in addition to its complications, it also happens to have a beautiful white enamel dial. It also has on the case back royal/aristocratic insignia, the initial V with a coronet engraved, and of course the white enamel dial has the movement number for the complication built inside on Victorin Piguet base. The moon phase indicator is located at 12 o'clock, which I like even more because it puts it at the focal point of the watch. The spade set of hands are quite stunning as well, with a very elegantly twisted minute hand and a elongated fine tip to the hour hand as well. The French calendar has the days of the week at 9 o'clock and the month indicator at 3 o'clock. And the pointer date actually encircles the continuous running seconds hand at 6 o'clock. All hands are in stainless steel, heat blued. And of course, there is a pusher, as far as I can see, for the minute repeater functions, for the chiming functions. No, I'm sorry, that's actually just a hinge. There's a slide here for the chiming functions of the watch. And of course, on the winding crown, there's a pusher integrated for the chronograph functions of the watch, which is expressed through the centrally deployed seconds hand. This is lot 70 for a rare and substantive yellow gold grand complication pocket watch by Patek Philippe, which has a pre-auction estimate set in the range between 30,000 to 50,000 US dollars. Guys, please hit the like button. We are coming towards the end of our auction coverage of our preview for tomorrow's Christie's Important Watches auction in New York. I think I will go for another 20 minutes unless some miracle happens like it did last time. We have about maybe 5 more watches. Maybe I'll try my best. If you have any last minute questions or if you want to suggest any lots for me to cover that I may have skipped over, that I didn't get to yet, please feel free. Lot 73 is one of my favorite variations of the tank. It's a tank chinoise from its original version from the 40s. The movement was designed and the case also signed by a European watch and clock company incorporated, which is really Jaeger-LeCoultre by another name, to put it very quickly. This case design is called tank chinoise because it's the elevated bars that wrap the sides of the case are inspired by the temple architecture from China, especially those entry gates, which are sometimes replicated in Chinatowns in the US as well. I think the design overall frames the dial so beautifully, and to have a vintage example of it that is in such a great condition, with the form completely intact, with the hallmarks crisp and very legible. It's quite a treat. I love, of course, the octagonal crown of the case, the déployant clasp that matches the gold material of the case. Incidentally, the Tank Chinoise was introduced in 1922 as a variation of the tank, so it's not actually a very contemporary creation. It's one of the earlier variations, as it were. But this example is from the 40s, and it has a case and movements made by or signed by European Watch Co. Hand-wound movements, the classic Cartier dial that has seen better days, but has that distinctive railroad track for the minutes, stylized Roman numerals, and heat-blued sword-shaped hands that give it both a certain flair and great legibility. This is lot 73 of a Cartier Tank Chinoise vintage in a very warm, charming 18-karat gold case, 24 by 31 millimeters. The piece has a pre-auction estimated value set in the range between 14 to 24,000 in US dollars. Lot 75 is your classic Rolex Explorer 2, the reference 1655. Chalk flew up, $10. Thank you. Great preview as usual. Appreciate your work. He also just signed up as a new member of the channel, gaining access to some exclusive content. I appreciate you, Chalk flew up. Really, really kind of you. Thank you so much. And again, as you guys know, I do depend not only in large part, but exclusively on your contributions, because this channel is completely independent and serves only its audience. It is dedicated to building a community that comes together for the passion for and knowledge of wristwatches. This is an example of that original reference, 1655, from around 1983. It's a piece that was awarded to professional golf champion Sebe Ballesteros. And I believe it comes actually with the full suite of its accessories as well. As you can see here, you know, the original warranty papers, the chronometer certification, all stamped and dated. The case, product literature, the leather wallets, the whole shebang. The case back sticker is still intact. The patina on the dial and the hands have patinated in a very uniform manner, and not suspiciously so. The fixed 24-hour bezel is in still good condition, even though, of course, some of the numbers have started fading, but that's very normal with Explorer 2 bezels, which is something you, of course, experience up until the version I have, for example, 16570. Stainless steel, of course, mounted on the matching Oyster bracelet. And as you can see, the 24-hour hand has faded or aged into this shade of yellow that we are more accustomed to seeing in our time, at least, in today's horological world. In Tudor's version of this particular complication, of a throwback to this model, and I'm talking about the Black Bay Pro, of course. So you can see that inspiration even more closely in the form of this model. Again, this is an Explorer 2 with a provenance related to golf, specifically because it was a award to a champion, Sebe Ballesteros, lot 75, which has an estimated value set in the range between 15,000 to 25,000 US dollars. Lot 80 is again an example of John Schaefer, meaning a cushion-cased AP that has a military dial in white, as it happens. Those military dials, as you know, especially when they come in the form of the Royal Oak or the millenary, they're usually black. So this is even more surprising. I had mentioned that the cushion-shaped case is called John Schaefer to honor the heritage of that original bespoke model, so to speak. This is a platinum case, 33 by 40.5 millimeters. Those are its dimensions. In platinum, comes with a matching platinum AP buckle and a travel case. Very nice sporty hands. A luminous dial with radially arrayed Arabic numerals and small seconds at 6 o'clock. Of course, there's a slide on the left flank of the case, which allows you to operate the chiming functions of the watch. I really like this case design. You guys know that I'm a big fan of the cushion case, whether we are talking about, of course, the original Rolex Oyster, its iteration in the form of the original Panerai Radiomir, or for that matter, in its more elegant and modern, dressy revival, so to speak, in Laurent Ferrier's square galet shape. And this watch also, for that reason, is very attractive to me, to my eyes. And it has this very unique sporty look and a very wearable aesthetic on the face of it. Beautiful platinum piece, of course, with a stunning movement that elaborates, that articulates the minute repeating functions of the watch. This is lot 80 for the John Schaefer minute repeater 25882 PT with an estimated value between 30,000 and 50,000 US dollars. I don't think we are reaching our goal. It ends in about 12 and a half minutes. But thank you for all your contributions, for all your super chats. It would be lovely, of course, if I see a surprise like last time. But we are 9 super chats of $5 or more away. But we have 15 minutes, so at least 3 more watches to discuss. And if we end on that note, that's quite all right. Lots 88 is a very nice pink gold AP Royal Oak presented on a leather bracelet. This is a 15300. So it was the self-winding 39 millimeter model that was not a jumbo, that had quote unquote AP's in-house self-winding movement with sweep center seconds. So it was thicker, but in the same case size as the jumbo. Case diameter, I should really say. It has oversized initial logo at 12 o'clock with Grand Tapisserie dial in white, which actually has a very distinguished and beautiful look in contrast to the pink gold case. Has a matching pink gold déployant, of course, that's clasp integrates like a kissing double AP logo. Beautiful idea. And here's a glimpse onto that movement through the case back. The reference 15300 was actually made between 2005 to 2012. So it was discontinued on the 40th anniversary. And it was the first model to feature AP's caliber 3120 instead of the JLC 920 based caliber 2121. So it wasn't ultra thin, but it had everything fitted into 39 millimeter case, which is the same diameter as the original Royal Oak reference 5402, and to this day, the jumbo reference. This is a 55-300 OR in a pretty nice condition, pink gold with the white dial, served up on a leather strap. Lot 88 has an estimated value in the range between 25,000 to 45,000 in US dollars, and lot 88 arrives with the original certificate of guarantee and authenticity, with the product literature, the presentation box, and the outer packaging as well. Lot 91 is a very attractive piece in my regard, at least. This is a 5066A. .36 millimeters in diameter in the stainless steel case, mounted as its original incarnation on a tropical style rubber strap which in its texture, in its pattern, matches the semi-gloss embossed black dial that is reminiscent of a grenade. Of course, the applied Arabic numerals and the broad luminous hands all are a throwback and nod to the original military provenance of the watch, which supposedly was first ordered by a high-ranking officer from a country in the Arabian Peninsula. And there are some original iterations of the watch in precious metal that are quite mind-blowing and gem set at its center. I have displayed some of those, or one of those rather, before on my Instagram. So if you want to check it out, you can just follow the link there. I'll drop it once again. I would rather not send you on a goose chase like that, but since I want to discuss at least two watches before I close, I'll stay right here. Of course, this is both in its size and some of its design elements different than the current 5167A, but that is also the reason why it remains so charming to certain collectors as well, because it's smaller, it's more rustic in a way, it's more rugged than the modern one, which is much more luxurious, much more integrated perhaps in its design, but the earlier neo-vintage versions of the Aquanaut have perhaps a certain sense of ruggedness, if not necessarily authenticity, maybe that's too big of a word, that you can't always find in the current production models, as beautiful as they might be from another perspective. Here's a look through the case back, the exhibition case back. This is an example from 2006 of the Patek Philippe Aquanaut 5066A, a classic version in its original design of the stainless steel Aquanauts, with an estimated value that is set between $15,000 to $25,000 in US dollars. Let's talk about two more watches before we wrap up the live stream for today. Feel free to hit the like button if you haven't done so already. I think we have let's boost these likes. Let's boost them over 30. If you haven't done so already, please. And hey, if you have chanced upon this live stream and for whatever reason you have not yet subscribed, please do so now, because we have watch-related content here on a regular basis, on a daily basis, ideally. And also, if you follow me on Instagram, you will have even more related horological lifestyle content as well. And that link is in the chat too. We're looking at one of my favorite versions of the Rolex Daytona. It is the original self-winding version. The reference 16520 was the first time that Rolex's sports chronograph was equipped with an automatic movement. That was in production between 1988 to 2000. The movement caliber 4030 was based on the Zenit El Primero, hence, pardon me, that's the reason that this reference is sometimes called the Zenit Daytona. Here in the black dial, it's perhaps in its most iconic Rolex sports watch iteration, even though the white/panda dial is oftentimes more demanded, more aspirational, more popular. This particular watch is basically naked, so it's watch only, stainless steel with its matching oyster bracelets from 1997, so towards the end of the production, closer to the end than the beginning in 1988, closer to 2000 when Rolex would furnish their Daytonas with a chronograph movement that they had made for the first time in-house. I think the kind of slightly off-white patination of the outer rings of chronograph registers, as well as the luminous material on the dial, adds some extra charm to this Rolex Daytona 16520 at lot 101, which has an estimated value set in the range between 15,000 to 25,000 US dollars. All right, last watch of the day. Are we ready? Unless, of course, someone asks via super chats watch related question or any question at all, or sends in a lot number from this auction, which is Christie's important watches, that is going to take place tomorrow. I want to choose that last watch carefully. And here we are. This is lot 54 for a chronomètre résonance in pink gold with a salmon pink dial. And of course, since it comes from 2014, also with a movement largely rendered in pink gold as well. Again, people, perhaps rightly from a certain perspective, nitpick about the finishing quality of FP Journe movements, especially in comparison with other niche boutique independent makers. But from a design standpoint, it really shows that François-Paul Journe always begins with a coherent perspective on both what will show up on the dial and what will also be aesthetically appealing in a movement that executes the expected functions, the demanded functions of the watch from it. Here, of course, in chronomètre résonance, you have two separate gear trains, essentially two different movements, of which the balance wheels are set in close proximity so that they balance out each other's errors, so that they correct each other's errors through the principle of resonance. Of course, in the horological world, that principle was implemented a long time ago by Abraham Louis Breguet, but those were in pocket watches that were 60 plus millimeters in diameter. So Journe's achievement of fitting everything in a 38 millimeter wristwatch was quite a feat of miniaturization when he first introduced the chronomètre résonance. around the turn of the century, if I'm not mistaken, around 2000. Um, of course, the two separate dials on the backdrop of that salmon and a power reserve display up there at pivoting around what would have been 11 o'clock. All the hands are heat blued, which provide a nice legibility, especially on those off-center dials that are guilloche decorated in the silvered finish. Of course, the chronomètre résonance went through a few changes and revised movements in its lifetime. So the current iteration is quite different from this piece. This is an FB Jaune chronomètre résonance from about a decade ago, from around 2014, with a pink on pink configuration, 40 millimeter pink gold case with a salmon pink dial, and of course, a movement rendered in 18 karat pink gold, quite a coherent picture overall. And the piece comes with its box and papers, as well as the outer packaging. Lot 54 has an estimated value that ranges between 150,000 to 250,000 US dollars. All right. We have come to the end of our broadcast for today. I've covered the Christie's important watches auction that's going to take place in New York tomorrow. And I am really grateful to all the generous people, especially C3D Now, who has super chatted on 5 different occasions, back to back, in fact, to help me stay live for an extra hour. So that's always great. Hopefully, we'll turn this into a marathon quite soon with your enthusiasm, with your support. ABNS, the original OC, also pledged their support, and Chalk Flew Up both gave a very generous super chat and became a new member, gaining access to exclusive content, which comes really handy on the secondary market, by the way, on the watch market in general, because it has very specific tips and introductions into looking after certain kinds of complications, certain models, brands and their placement on the market, and the kind of deals you can find on them. So that's a great way to support the channel. The basic way is, of course, hitting the like button if you haven't done so already. If you have somehow come across this live stream and you like watches, you should certainly subscribe, because I have watch content on a regular basis. If you want to support the channel, the best way is sharing the links to the videos, to the live streams, to the platform as such, at Young Brando on your YouTube, at young.brando on Instagram, with other collectors, with fellow watch enthusiasts. So please do that. If you want to support the channel in other ways, there are links in the video description, but I'm going to drop quickly the link to my PayPal in the chat as well. Once again, I really appreciate you. Thank you all for your contributions. Once the live stream ends, please feel free to hit the like button, as always, but also leave a comment. I will see you in the next one, hopefully sooner than later. But I do plan to have a live stream perhaps around the same time, if not earlier, tomorrow. In the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy, wear and enjoy your watches. Goodbye.